For their first wedding anniversary, some friends of mine made a little film for their friends. Not of the meals they'd cooked and places they'd been, what a relief, but walking in a forest with mirrors pointed to the sky, dancing on the steps of a church pointing to the cross, and in a forest again, finally lying down to rest with the mirrors pointing to the sky again. The soundtrack was a mixture of music and voiceover. A charming Anglo-American voice. It was about the universe being play, a dance like music. I quote, "We play music, we don't work music. The universe didn't have to come into being, it doesn't have a purpose. But we work always in the hope that the big thing will arrive." The voice was that of the writer Alan Watts. Actually, he was a rather tragic figure, a New Age guru of the 1960s who never achieved the grand synthesis of Christianity and Buddhism he aspired to. He saw Christianity as a beautiful myth, but that we lost something on the way, so he looked east. But his personal life was a mess, and this led to his early death. I wish he could have seen my friends dance. Because you see, they believe in the cross, and they believe in the resurrection. The resurrection isn't just a happy ending bolted onto a tragedy because a sad ending would be unbearable, a bit like the doctored versions of Shakespeare's plays. The vague sense of new life that came to Jesus' followers as they somehow reflected on his life and teachings in the years that followed, that didn't help Alan Watts, and it won't help us. Because this is no bloodless myth, in the words of the poet Geoffrey Hill. It's the story of one who gave his lifeblood and whose reappearance, risen from the dead, is the testimony of named eyewitnesses. Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James. The very way she's named presupposes a small community where people know each other and know each other far too well to accept nonsense. They may indeed find it harder to accept truth, as we see from Peter and the others today. Because this is a truth that turns our lives upside down. The problem of evil, which rightly horrifies and anguishes us, is answered by a God who, as Father Bruno said, does not just live, which we might expect, but a God who dies. Why do you seek the living among the dead? That is the great challenge of Eastertide. The comedian Woody Allen is quoted as saying, "Don't take my neuroses away, they keep me warm at night." The familiar, the old sinful world may be dark and unpleasant, but too often we prefer the devil we know to the God we don't, the God who flipped life and death round into death and life, the God who in playful love tore up the opposition of work and play, the blind workaholism which Alan Watts rightly critiqued, but for which he never found a satisfactory alternative. My friends who made their playful film aren't rich, they work hard. They suffer the daily effects of a fallen world as much as the rest of us do. But through their baptism, they share already in the freedom and joy of the risen Lord. In the sacrament of marriage, my friends gave their lives to each other and received the grace of the resurrection. Life given, not life taken, as Father Bob said on Maundy Thursday. This is Christian sacrifice. But it's big, the resurrection. In French, if you want to say that epic 3-hour meal conversation was putting the world to rights, you say refaire le monde, remaking the world. We remade the world symbolically tonight, with light born of the new fire and the first creation story from Genesis. Shortly we will bless the new water. Cosmic stuff. Is this a bit big for some tastes, a bit pagan? But the cosmos, the creation, is right there tonight in the fire, the water, and the consecration of time itself to God. On Good Friday at Tenebrae, we heard the cross praised in a sermon preached at Easter in the 4th century. This tree, vast as heaven itself, rises from the earth to the skies, a plan immortal, set firm in the midst of heaven and earth, base of all that is, foundation of the universe, support of this human world, binding force of all creation, holding within itself all the mysterious essence of humankind. Secured with the unseen clamps of the Spirit, it is so adjusted to the divine that it may never bend or warp. Its foot rests firmly on earth, yet it towers to the topmost skies and spans with its all-embracing arms the boundless gulf of space between. High poetry, but actually no more than an expansion of the words of St. Paul in Colossians, probably quoting an early Christian hymn. Through him, God was pleased to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, by making peace through the blood of his cross. In their film, my friends walked gently on this wounded earth and danced with graceful power on the steps of a church, pointing up to the cross on its roof, rooted to the earth and reaching to the skies, marrying heaven and earth. They lay down in rest with mirrors reflecting the skies and the trees, that it might be on earth as it is in heaven. During the 40 days of Lent, we gave up good things so that we might not make them our gods, but rather share them with those in need and let the earth rest. During the 50 days of Easter, we received them back as first fruits of the new creation. In what begins as a light in the night of one who is not here, the proclamation of angels passed on by faithful witnesses, gradually we will encounter the risen Lord himself. We will stop struggling to remake the world from the place of our own mortality. Was that the original sin from which the Lord rescued us? Rather, we'll learn to work and play from the immortal life of the resurrection, in which even now we share through the sacraments, and especially in the Holy Eucharist, where we receive the risen Lord. He becomes our food, our drink. You are what you eat. His risen life will be pulsing in our veins. And we'll take up all the good wisdom of the ages, as my friends did with Alan Watts' celebration of play, knowing this wisdom is incomplete, but is completed by the wisdom of God, who breathes the Spirit into our lives. Alan Watts is right. The universe didn't have to come into being. God made it out of the playful, overflowing love of the Trinity. But it does have a purpose, which is the marriage of heaven and earth, in which God will be completely visible to us. So this Eastertide, maybe we'll learn not to take ourselves too seriously, but rather to bless everyone and everything around us through the power of him who died and lived and makes all things new.